It's almost impossible to imagine, isn't it? 18 years. For 18 years, she had been crippled, forced into this unnatural posture. The strain on her spine must have been huge, so she was probably always in a degree of pain. Being bent over like that will have compressed her internal organs as well, leading to all sorts of other discomforts. Her field of vision was limited to a circle, a few feet across, round her own feet. She could see people's legs, but she couldn't look up and see their faces if they stopped to talk with her. And mostly, of course, they didn't. It was an effort to talk to her, and an effort to listen for her answers, which were spoken towards the ground. And what did she have to say anyway? She didn't go anywhere outside the village or do anything very much at all, so her conversation didn't offer much. She probably had family. Certainly someone was looking after her, but she couldn't make friendships in the easy way that you can with people you can look in the eye. No, I think her life was quite silent, quite empty of contact, a life of patient, painful waiting. She had probably given up all hope of getting better. But she hadn't given up on God. Why else did she keep going to the synagogue? She could hear the words of comfort and reassurance as the men read out loud from the Torah, even if it felt as if the words somehow didn't apply to her. And then one of the men called her over and said incomprehensible, unhoped-for words to her and laid his hands on her. And, wonder of wonders, she could stand up straight. She could look round and see the compassion on the face of the stranger who had touched her, the shock and amazement on the faces of the others, the joy, perhaps, on the faces of those whom she could call her friends. Now, she knew that the women were supposed to be quiet in the synagogue, but surely not on an occasion like this. She couldn't help herself. Head held high, back straight, arms stretched to heaven, she shouted her praises to the God whose blessings had not, after all, passed her by. Of course she did. What else could she do? Who would not give praise and thanks for such a miracle? But there was one man who was not smiling. He was scowling, in fact, and he started to speak angry words, saying that the stranger, the healer, shouldn't have done it. She was half drunk with the joy of her newfound freedom of movement, of being able to see the world as other people saw it. And now here was someone saying that this was wrong? Why would he possibly say that? Well, after we have joined the woman in praising God, we will find out. The best that we can say for the ruler of the synagogue in this story is that he was zealous for God's honor. God had laid down as a law that no work should be done on the Sabbath. Healing was work. Therefore, this healing should not have been done on the Sabbath. God's law must trump human compassion. This woman had been crippled for 18 years, for heaven's sake. Jesus would still be there when the Sabbath ended, as another law forbade travel. Couldn't he have waited until the next day to heal her? What this minor official failed to recognize was that it was God who had done the healing, and that it was God with whom he was arguing. And when God's in the room, he does what he wants, and the laws take second place. The ruler of the synagogue stands in a long line of people, including me, and probably you as well, who are good at finding reasons for not doing the right thing. Sometimes, of course, it's just self-serving. I haven't got the time. It's inconvenient. It would cost me too much. But sometimes it's much more high-minded than that. We find good religious reasons, whether it's canon law or an obscure verse from another part of the Bible, or a need to seek the permission of a higher authority for not doing something that a basic understanding of the gospel would impel us to do. Let's look at the healing in this story again. Although he was God, Jesus, in his earthly ministry of healing, was doing things that a man could do. Indeed, he told his disciples that they would do these miracles and more. It was as a man that he was moved with compassion, as a man that he trusted his Father in heaven to heal the woman. And it was God who responded to that faith and healed her. The ruler of the synagogue does not recognize God at work. So in trying to apply the law, he is trying to set limits on God's freedom of action. As soon as you say it, you realize not just how ridiculous that is, but how terrible it is. The man is trying to stop God doing God's work. And churches all over the world still try to do that today for all sorts of pious reasons. I wonder if we do. As I read reports from the Lambeth Conference, I felt very sorry for Archbishop Justin Welby, tying himself in knots, trying to hold together irreconcilable positions in the Anglican Communion. It must be like trying to bring together the repelling poles of two giant magnets, effortful and futile. If only as Christians we could discern the work of God and go with that flow wherever it takes us, scary as it may sometimes be, and praising God as we do so. I know that is far easier said than done, but it is the way the kingdom of God works, a kingdom that Jesus gives us a glimpse of in today's story.